so we'll get going here pretty quickly. Thank you for coming to this meeting today. We have some important topics to discuss. We want to do an overview of COVID-19. We're going to talk about salary and benefits and also the budget process. And then I want to give you just an update on the events that are forthcoming in the next few weeks. So on our campus, to date, since April of 2020, we've now reported 90 positive cases of COVID-19. That's 47 students and 43 staff, faculty, and administrators. A lot of folks think that COVID-19 has kind of faded, but actually I asked Warren Yell, who's the CEO of Eastern New Mexico Medical Center, to come and talk with us. He was kind enough to do this today, and he supported us in the past when we were in the early days of COVID. We had a meeting over in the dining hall, and he came and talked about COVID-19. But he has some information that I want him to share with you regarding community and state COVID-19 statuses and the local hospital. So without further ado, Mr. Yell.
All right, good morning. Good morning. My name is Warren Yell. I'm the CEO at Eastern New Mexico Medical Center. The college and the hospital share a lot of things. 2/3 of our name is exactly the same. So some of the new people in the community think the hospital is the college, and I'm sure the college gets occasionally people that get confused by that as well. But so glad to be able to speak to you guys today. I want to appreciate, I don't know if you appreciate this, but Dr. Powell actually sits on our board for the hospital. He's one of our newest board members, and a part of that is the continuing the long tradition of interaction between the college and the hospital. We recruit extensively. In fact, Dr. Powell and I were joking a little bit with the team. We want more nurses, we want more respiratory, we need them. And we're recruiting as aggressively as we can, and the college has been a great asset for our community and for the hospital here in the medical community. So COVID. Someday I will get to stop talking about COVID. But unfortunately, we are kind of in a position where COVID is back on the forefront, if it ever really went away. That being stated, I want to give you a little bit of an update, real time, like in the last 48 hours, where are we at with COVID. So in the last 48 hours at Eastern New Mexico Medical Center, we have hit a census that we've probably not seen since 1998, maybe longer. We had 116 concurrent Test. All right, that's my fault. 116 concurrent inpatients in the hospital at one time yesterday morning. We were at 103 this morning. We've been hitting over 100 consistently for probably about 2 to 3 weeks. Right now in the hospital this morning, we had 34 COVID inpatients. So it's here, it's present. 90 to 95%, if not greater, are unvaccinated patients. Just want to put that out there. And this is not scientific, peer-reviewed, or anything like that, but we are seeing day in, day out, tends to be patients who tend to be overweight or have comorbidities that tend to put you at the highest risk for a hospitalization. Right now, in our 19-bed ICU, we are running 19 patients. 15 of those are COVID positive, and 10 of those are ventilated. So when you hear about COVID, you hear about what's taking place on the inpatient side. It's here. It's occupied. It's in our hospital here in Roswell. It's in our hospital across the state. You may have seen some news things yesterday, so you'll hear the term crisis standards of care. Sounds really scary. In my opinion, and working with the hospitals, it doesn't mean a whole lot. It's hypothetically a risk mitigation type liability thing. But that being stated, Farmington and San Juan has issued the crisis standards. Yesterday, UNM issued the crisis standards, and Presbyterian issued the crisis standards. What that means is essentially it is to allow hospitals to try to do unique care processes to provide the best care they can to the most amount of patients. It often means that they're shutting down. Right now, it means they're shutting down elective and urgent, meaning they're only doing urgent and emergent surgeries in those larger locations. What it means to us in Roswell is it's a little bit harder to get patients to those higher level tertiary centers because they just do not have the bed capacity. All right, so doom and gloom, right? It sounds really scary or terrible when you kind of talk about it. There's a lot of, I think, optimism to be seen with all this. I've been incredibly proud of the first responders. We are still, I'm not sure if we shut down ever. I think it was for a short period. I think we were one of the first programs at Big Rack. Our clinical rotations with students as well. So the students were still involved. We still have to educate, we still have to train and do our clinical rotations. We are still doing business as usual to the best of our ability. Still trying to do our urgent elective cases, still trying to take care of the patients in our community. Part of the reason why is part of the acuity challenges that we're seeing in the hospital. My personal opinion is because of some of the shutdowns, delay in cares, and concerns that have happened over the last year and a half. What we see now is we're seeing a little bit of a come together convergence of COVID. There is a little bit of flu. We haven't really seen that on the inpatient side yet, but it is in our community. We're seeing it in our lab tests, and there's RSV in our communities as well. We've seen several pediatric RSV patients this year. Last year, we almost saw none. I mean, less than a handful of RSV, less than a handful of flu. It was an incredible, it'll be a statistical anomaly for decades what happened last year with some of the other seasonality that we see out there. So acuity is up. People are sick, and COVID is present. And they're not all the same issue. They all kind of overlap on each other. The winter months are always the higher volume months in hospitals because of respiratory illnesses and things like that. But we are seeing just an incredible demand. My 3 years at Eastern as a CEO, the highest census I saw in those last 3 years was maybe 82 for a day. And like I said, we've been consistently running 3 figures. In addition to that, I want you to know we are going to continue to stand up to the challenge. We are working to bring additional resources in. We are at another unit. We've already opened 1 additional unit. There's a second unit we're looking to bring open by next week. That'll open up another 7 to 14 beds to just continue to ensure we have the capacity to take care of our community. So I'm going to stop there. There's probably a ton of questions out there on different components. I'll try to answer anything to the best of my ability. Disclaimers, I am not a doctor. I'm just a CEO. And I can just give you kind of my thoughts, my opinions, what I've seen. Eastern is one of the 7 hub hospitals for COVID. So it's us, the 3 tertiary facilities in Albuquerque, Memorial, Las Cruces, Farmington, and Christus. And we do meet on a weekly basis talking about what we're seeing across the state, how do we collaborate together, work together. Eastern and Roswell is responsible for 11 other hospitals in southeast New Mexico, from Tucumcari to Lincoln County over to Hobbs. And we've been working very collaboratively for the last year and a half, and we continue to do so on a daily basis. So there's a lot of medical collaboration going on behind the scenes to ensure we're providing the best care to our region. All right, so any questions, if you want to show a hand? Yes, sir.
Are the insurance companies covering the full cost of being treated at the hospital?
That's a great question. He asked, are the insurance companies covering the full cost of being treated at the hospital? I will give you my stance of just watching what I see on the news, the same thing you guys are seeing. A lot of the information, a lot of people are like, hey, Warren, what special news sources and things do you have? It's called the radio and TV, and what you guys can see is often how I find out about things as well. There is some chatter. I'm not aware of any local insurances in our region doing this yet, but there's some chatter about potentially if you are not vaccinated and end up with COVID and get hospitalized, like you may be responsible for a larger portion of your bill. We've not seen that in our community. We've not seen it in our insurances, but that is something that on a national level I'm hearing chatter on. Insurance is still somewhat of a regional phenomenon, so every region may have different impacts. But that is something I have heard discussions on. I just haven't seen it come to play yet. Yeah. So how many of you have a tally on your fridge every time you hear a helicopter? So the helicopters are kind of an interesting. Dr. Powell asked if I could speak a little bit about the transfers that Eastern's participating in. So the helicopters are a two-way street, right? There's people that we have to get to tertiary centers that we're transferring out. Those are typically open hearts, brain surgery, plasmapheresis for certain diseases, high-level dialysis. There's a whole spectrum of tertiary level services that we need to get our community to receive that we just do not have or are able to provide. There's also a lot of services that we provide. The blessing is, the way I look at it, the stronger, larger, more robust that Eastern New Mexico Medical Center is, the better it is for our local community as well. But it also lends itself that we have an obligation to help out our region in that capacity. We are the only hospital out of the 11 hospitals that has inpatient dialysis. Doesn't seem like a big deal, but when you have these critical care patients, there's a lot of patients to us coming to us from not only our region. In the last 3 weeks, we are getting daily calls from Zuni up in the Northwest, Gila Regional, Farmington area, Silver City, Gallup. We got a transfer in yesterday from Muleshoe. So very non-traditional transfer sources. And a lot of what we're finding is these are patients that, we actually got one yesterday from Arizona for a cardiac rollout. What's happening is Roswell, I always put it this way, no one woke up today and said, hey, Roswell's the new medical center for the Southwest here. What's happening is when we do the same thing, when you have a patient that needs a higher level service, we have to do our best interest to get that patient to that place as quick as possible. So what they do is they go through their traditional referral sources, which are typically within an hour. Then you go 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. And we're kind of in that next layer that has capacity, and our hospital's been able to say yes, where I'm assuming, I make the big assumption there, that they have called all the Albuquerque facilities, Las Cruces facilities, and we may be the next facility with some bed capacity. And so where we can, we have stepped up, and we have gotten, in the last 2 to 3 weeks, probably 10 to 15 patients from the west or northwest part of the state that you would have never thought us receiving here pre-COVID. Yes, sir. They are. So New Mexico, early on, this has been an interesting topic. So are other states receiving patients from New Mexico? And a lot of it just depends on capacity, to be perfectly honest. So if Lubbock has some beds, we try to utilize the closest resources refer to us. I heard early on in the COVID, last year and a half, there have been some states that tried to, not used to, shut down the border from certain transfers to try to take care of their own ecosystem. All that being stated, New Mexico has always been a net sender of patients. We have a lot of cities that are close to various border communities, so down in El Paso, us on the east side towards Lubbock, et cetera. And so while we do take patients from Texas, Colorado, or Arizona, we are also sending patients to Texas, Colorado, and Arizona. And it's always been in the net benefit of New Mexico, so we've never really, we've looked at that at a state level. Do we need to kind of take care of our internal to kind of give us back capacity? But we've always been a net gainer from beds when we get into those situations on a macro level. So that's never been really shut down or considered. Yes?
Are we at the point yet where ventilators are, where you might have to make a choice, you get a ventilator or you don't? Are we there yet?
That's a great question. Are we at a point where we are essentially triaging care or having to pick and choose or daisy chain ventilators or other acute resources? To be honest, and I will say this is one thing that I've been very proud of what we've been able to do in Roswell. Being a hub facility, you know, there are some responsibilities that come with it, but there also are some benefits. We received a lot of various equipment and lab technology and things like that very early on. And you'd hear about it on CNN on Sunday, and you'd have it in Roswell, New Mexico on Wednesday. It was just amazing. All that being stated, we have not run into any situations where we've ever had to pick and choose who was going to get a ventilator. We've always had enough equipment to take care of everything we need, and we've had enough staff to take care of everything we need. There are stories out there, and since I personally didn't live them, I can share them, but wasn't there. When you hear, it's all about. There we go. Sorry about that. It's all about the perspective that you're in. So the blessing is in Roswell. I always tell people a lot where, I heard the mayor say once, we're the oasis in the desert. I think there's always a blessing and a con to being kind of as remote as we are. One of the blessings is that we did receive a lot of equipment, technology, and assistance early on and continue to do so. And our community is relatively regionally a little smaller. So we don't have 100,000 or 500,000 people accessing the same equipment that you may be accessing in a bigger urban center. So we've always had the capacity. We were able to get flu shots out quickly, and then we have ample supply of that now in our community. We were able to get additional ventilators. We were always been able to provide that where we needed because the demand wasn't outweighing the supply. So to your point, we have them today. It's interesting. So Vapotherm, it's a name brand for high flow nasal cannula. I'm gonna talk like I know what I'm doing. But it's a lot of oxygen that just helps people that may be struggling to keep their saturations up. We had one of those pre-COVID. Great technology, it was new to us about 2 years ago. We're not planning for the pandemic. Pandemic hits us, we now have 10 of those in-house, which is amazing. That's amazing. So we were able to provide those. We have plenty of BiPAPs and CPAPs, which are just other ways to try to get people's saturations up. And we've never run into an issue with ventilators yet either. We have a contingency plan. If we really, really got pinched on ventilators, our anesthesia machines can be converted to ventilators. We have a whole tiered structure, and we've never had to get to our plan Bs or Cs. We've always been able to provide the services we need. For what it's worth, and again, this is where the regional comes in, we've worked with Artesia and Carlsbad to share equipment if we got into a pinch, either facility. And so there's a lot of collaboration happening behind the scenes to ensure if we have a pickup or they have a pickup, that we help each other out until we restabilize. Yes, ma'am?
How has the increased census and the increased acuity contributed to healthcare worker fatigue, burnout, compassion fatigue? Are you guys seeing any of that in the hospital?
Everywhere. So,
How is that impacting care?
Yeah, I think it's impacting everything. I would argue patients are more stressed and fatigued coming in. Patients is a lot less than what people used to have, just in the general community as well. I will tell you the healthcare community is incredibly stressed and tired, and a lot of our nurses have been working 4 shifts, 5 shifts beyond the typical 3 to kind of help us stand up and provide the care for our communities. The healthcare fatigue, I think what we've seen in the last year and a half, we've seen a lot of nurses retire. I'm not critical of that in any capacity, but a pandemic is an incredibly difficult situation to work in. There could be personal choices, their own personal safety or concerns about COVID, especially early on. The work process, the work required. COVID patients do require isolation. Just for both the protection of the workforce and from the patient. And so there's additional steps that have to be done. There's additional work that has to be done. You can't just walk into a room and assist. You have to suit up and prep and then come out and suit up and prep. It's a very kind of tiring and exhausting period. So the other thing you'll hear a lot, healthcare has been politicized. It always probably has been for years, but the last year and a half, you take things like the vaccine mandate, which I'm not going to try to get too into on the political side there, but those things become stressors into the healthcare system that then just lead to additional challenges beyond just how do you take care of the patient. So it has been an incredibly stressful time. The issue how many of you kind of work on like disaster prep or planning, right? You follow the NIMSIS and the various processes, you do your P cycles. A disaster of 72 hours, even a couple weeks, is fatiguing. This, if you go back to March of last year, what are we at, like 18, almost 20 months? This is a completely unprecedented kind of process that we're kind of working through right now. To be perfectly honest, we've had some nurses leave the community to pursue travel assignments that are incredibly lucrative right now. Supply, any of the economists in here will appreciate supply and demand. It does apply in healthcare as well. Again, not critical of that. A lot of our local workforce has pursued opportunities in other places, but they're still here in our community, and I do believe they will come back over time. It's just an incredibly challenging environment out there. So we have brought in a lot of contract labor to help us take care of our community and take care of our location here. But we also have had a lot of nurses stay with us here as well. I will tell you, no amount of money takes the place of fatigue. You can work 4 or 5 shifts. At some point, people do need that break, they need that time away. And what we're trying to do is bring in enough resources to where people don't have to work those required mandatory overtime hours so they get that chance to recharge so when they do come back. But it's a kind of a changing target every single day. We have people coming and going, and how do you get enough people in-house to make sure we can take appropriate care of the patients and still give people enough rest between those cycles to where they can recharge their battery. If you know someone in healthcare, give them an air hug, I guess, or a hug. Keep them in your thoughts. There's a lot less. Early in COVID, there was a lot of bring back meals and come out and they pray inside the hospital. All great things. I'm not being critical of any of that. But in the last 6 months, year, it's kind of like now it's turned into why aren't you getting to me quicker? Why am I not upstairs yet? there's a lot less patience, I think, for the process. And people, I think, in general across the country, we're all a little tenser, we're stressed. We don't necessarily have none of us have control of the situation, which I think just adds to this general stress. And we feel it in healthcare as well. It's unique too, the patients we see in the ICU now, they're young. They're in their 30s or in their 40s. It's different kind of mental and emotional strain when you're taking care of patients. You should never say it this way, but who have had a full life, who have lived a life, who are sick, who are kind of at this end stages, versus someone who's in their 40s and who are sick and has been on a ventilator for 14 days, and you're trying to wean them off the ventilator and get them better, and the patient just doesn't ever seem to be kind of bouncing back fully. So it has a different emotional and mental strain on our staff that just, you don't feel it immediately, it just kind of eats away at you. And so there's a lot more, as a CEO, there's a lot more collaboration and coaching and talking, trying to mediate as people kind of maybe a little bit shorter with each other than they would traditionally or normally be. But we're still trying to make sure we keep the team together, so we work together and provide the best care for our patients. So it's a tough, it's there. To say it's not would be foolish.
Well, I was reading an article that said something about healthcare workers, nurses, respiratory therapists are a great contributor to great resignation.
They are. People are burning out, and there's a million reasons why. There's a lot of body autonomy stuff related to the vaccine, there's the work hours, there's the ratios, there's all the different challenges that go into it. And I try to listen, hear them out, hear their truth, and kind of see what's going through there. And then we try to figure out how do we do the best we can to tackle that. The big issue is there were not enough nurses pre-pandemic for the country. There's definitely, with the resignation, I think a lot of people were holding on and working a little bit later in their careers in nursing and other places, and then when this happened, it was a great equalizer. Everyone was equally unprotected, and a lot of people just made that personal decision for their own safety or work, or they saw what was coming, that they kind of stepped out of the workforce, which compounded that gray hole. So that's why we're extreme supporters of the nursing program. We want to graduate every nurse we can, because the need is for every, I have 90 openings in the hospital right now. If we graduate 20 a year and I keep every single nurse, it'll take me 4 to 5 years. And so we gotta, at a bigger level, figure out how do we grow our own big picture, invest long-term, grow our nursing, grow our respiratory, grow our paramedics and MAs and phlebotomists, all those great programs you guys have here, expand those programs and do a good job on them. But then how do we also make sure we bring in additional help to assist us? We are looking at international nurses. They've been a great asset to us for many years. And then, of course, unfortunately, we're using a lot of contract labor right now, which are anywhere from 4 to 8 week, 13-week contracts. And then we do occasionally, we're able to keep some people here. So those are always great. They introduce them to Roswell, and some of them do stay and put down roots and stay with us. Yes, ma'am?
So I know we focused on the healthcare workers, but there are other areas in your hospital, like the accounting office, dietary staff, lots of places where you probably need employees. How can we at the college best support, through this pandemic, how can we best support the incoming potential workforce that the hospital needs?
Sure. A lot of it, there's certain, we can teach anyone to do anything in a hospital. So technical skills are always great, they're great, and certain ones, like nursing, has a very subset of technical skills. But honestly, teaching people work ethic, showing up on time, being passionate and excited about what they do, they want to provide a good product, be kind of driven. Those kind of core skill sets, I think every teacher is always trying to instill an instructor at a professor level as well. I think really encouraging them. So the packets I handed out, that has some broad stuff about the hospital, it has some connections, but I would encourage them to check out our career. We've been at every career fair the EDC and others have put on in town. We are working to try to constantly kind of work to stay up. I know you guys are going to be talking about salary and benefits. That's a hot button topic across the country, and it's definitely a hot button topic here. Kind of one of the things I've looked at, and I've said this a couple times, there's an economic talent workforce in our community. And it's great, and we're all trying to capitalize for the same 200, 300, 400 employees that are out there in the market, those higher performing people. The question I get to, we gotta do that, we gotta stay competitive, et cetera, but really, how do we work with you guys, work with the college, work on workforce development to really train and develop to where we have 1,200 people, 1,400 people, 1,600 people. So one, we can take care of the industries we have here, healthcare being one of them, but also how do we bring in others to kind of grow our community. We gotta grow our talent pool. We gotta grow those people that have the skill sets, that have the energy. And the biggest thing I see that we struggle with, and I don't know how to train this, and I don't know if you guys, there's probably someone in here who has a seminar or a lesson on this, but it's a sometimes demonized word, but ambition. I want to do something. I want to grow. I want to continue to work. I want a job. Well, a job is important. You need a job. We got to pay our bills, take care of our families. Those are very responsible, respectful things to do. But how do you grow someone to be a lifelong learner? Someone who wants to continue to grow in their career, be more, learn more, do more once they get out of the programs. And that's, I think, the biggest thing that if we can work with you guys, externs, rotations, clinical rotations, tours, anything we can do to collaborate with you guys in your programs. I view the hospital as kind of an open, real-world lab that we can work with you to try to work on. So all the clinical programs that are on a clinical rotation are already doing clinicals. If there's other opportunities to do that, we'd love to partner in other programs that we may not have traditionally thought of. Any other questions? I know I probably went way over my time. Hot button topic. Deanne? Oh, there. She has some of my business cards. And so if it does have my cell number, my email. If you guys have any other specific questions, comments, or thoughts, I'd love to connect with you. Again, Dr. Powell has my number. I know he's not afraid to use it. And from that perspective, we want to be good community partners. You should be, and I am incredibly proud of what the hospital has been able to do. Have we been perfect? We have not. But we have done some incredible things, and we've tried to grow into the challenge that's ahead of us. We are not out of it. We are anticipating a very, very busy winter. The COVID, compared to the first surge, back last November, December, January, last year, it kind of came, and then we got into the mid-20s, and it came back down to the teens, and we got down to the single digits for several months. This one, we have not been under 20 plus COVID positive inpatients since, I think, July 18th. So this one has come, and it's plateaued, and then it's still coming. And now we're at 34 this morning. And so we're proud to take care of our community. We're proud to take care of your community is taking care of your community. We hope we don't see you there, but rest assured that we're working behind the scenes to make sure we're providing additional capacity and equipment and supplies and resources come in this direction. You may have saw in the paper last week, there are some state-driven resources coming our direction. The state has got involved with some travel companies. We have another 16 to 20 personnel, and again, trying to address some of the fatigue to give hopefully our staff a little bit of reprieve so they can take a little bit of breaks. But at the same time, every resource that brings in here, we're trying to figure out, well, how does this help us take care of the patients we have here, and how do we expand our capacity to stand up to the challenge? To do nothing is not an acceptable response. To fail is not acceptable. We can't. Our mission's too important. The mission will come first. We will figure out a way to take care of what we need to. And I'm very proud of the team we have. There's a lot of smart, committed people working behind the scenes to tackle that. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about losses of life compared to last year. Are they up, or is it pretty much comparable to last year?
So the mortality related to COVID, or just in general, or? So it's hard. I don't have any exact numbers like, we had X and now we have Y. I can tell you since this wave, we're seeing a different group. The first group we saw last year tended to be older people, 60, 70, 80 plus. This group, we were seeing people in their 30s, people in their 40s. Now it's still the exception, not the norm. Some things that I have seen out there, just so you're aware, and this is again anecdotal, the national stats don't really change whether you're across the country or in Roswell, meaning 97% of people still never get hospitalized, potentially. They may come to the ER, they may be vaccinated, maybe whatever. The 3%, that's where you start to see it. That 3%, 1% ICU level, that's where it starts to become the compounding effect. And this is where the numbers, sometimes you're like, whoa, this can't be that big of a deal. When you have a 19-bed ICU and your average length of stay of a COVID inpatient who's ventilated is 16 days, if you have one a day out of 50,000, and we see about 100, give or take, people in our ER, one a day comes in and they have to go to the ICU. And then they're in there 16 days. In 16 days, my ICU is full, and that doesn't leave any other additional room for any other critical patient. That's what is happening. It isn't a mass scale. It's not like we have 400 people in the ER. It's this very gradual, slow, long length of stay. People don't bounce back as quickly. The nursing homes may not be able to take capacity, or the LTACs, the long-term acute care, can't take capacity. And then slowly the system starts to slow down, and that's where some of these challenges and capacity challenges are coming in across the state and across the country. That's what's leading to some of this healthcare kind of hearing, like, man, it doesn't feel like that. Well, it's not like we had a mass surge. It's a slow and gradual increase, and they're staying in the hospital much, much longer because they're just not bouncing back as quickly. And we are seeing a much younger group, may not be the majority, but we are seeing people in the younger demographics than what we did in the first surge. A lot of different theories on why. I'm not sure I can explain all those. Valid question. Anybody else? Tough topic. All right, well, truly, you should be optimistic. We are stepping up to it. The holiday season is always a incredible time. So, try to love your loved ones. We got to live our lives, so I'm a firm believer you got to find that balance. I'll tell you my personal story. I'm personally a kidney transplant recipient. I take immunosuppressants every single day. I did get my vaccine as soon as it was appropriate, and I've gotten my booster. I've been in and out of COVID units for the last 18 months, and I've never gotten it. If you follow your precautions, you wash your hands, you take appropriate steps, it is a very manageable, but the challenge is, how do we balance that with our behaviors, with our lifestyles, with our own personal thoughts? I'm not advocating one way or another, but my own personal journey, I've just tried to be extra cautious and proactive on it. I've still gone on vacations, taken care of my kids, gone to events, interacted with socially. So you gotta find that balance in your life, but how do you do it in a way that's as safe as possible? So one story, you can never base that on, make assumptions on, but it's just how do you personally interact and internalize some of these is, I think, going to dictate. There's also equal tragic situations where everyone did everything right and still had a bad outcome. So it's a amazing world we live in right now, and I just encourage you guys, encourage myself, live with empathy, compassion, and try to take care of your friends and neighbors as best as we can. It's a very polarizing time. We should be coming together more and trying to tackle this. But it seems to really decisively cut us apart. So look for those opportunities to find those synergies and kind of work together on things. All right.
Thank you for coming. We wanted to give you some gifts there that have the ENMU Roswell emblem on them, and we appreciate the partnership with the hospital, and thank you for coming and sharing that information today. Let's give them a round of applause. So next up, we have Joe Cedillo is going to come up, and he's going to talk about the salary and budget, and so I'll turn the floor over to you, Joe. And Stephanie is going to come up. Okay.
You just have to hit the mouse, just pad, and now it'll wake up. And it's lab student, just so student. And his Excel spreadsheet's on the bottom.
Good morning.
Good morning.
As promised, I'm going to not talk about salaries overall. I'm going to update you as to the compression issue that I promised that we would do, and we've been working with it. When you induce a concept, whether it's an alphanumeric, a integer, a number that we're talking about, whether it was by design or by random, you stand a large chance of introducing order into disorder. We have here a table that's been here forever, and my first thoughts was that it was nearing its life, and the life itself was being disenchanted by the usage of it. So we had most tables like this have an algorithm behind it that is supposed to be by design, but it does move. There is a certain symmetrical or asymmetrical component to this. So on the left-hand side, you have what's supposed to be classifications on that. But throughout the years, the salary increases rates were picked and choose by rates, not by classifications. This further threw the table itself as very asymmetrical because it was used way beyond its function. One of the problems that we've had is now realized by the $15 input or absorption at the beginning for those who were making less than $15. And that is a great initiative. However, by doing that, with respect to the chart, it really threw everything off between B12 and H17 as shown up there. So there are 7 classifications that had to be artificially pushed and calculated from a new beginning range in order to figure out what the maximum range is. Within that, we had to come up with a formula that was rather consistent in demonstrating what those increases are across the board. So horizontally, it's symmetrical. Vertically, and it also had some asymmetrical components to this. But by inputting the $15, then it threw everything off, and the reason probably why I'm here. So the compression is this. That is a small difference. This is a small difference in pay between employees, regardless of skills, experience, or seniority. That's what we see in this area. And this is only this chart is only to support and professional. Faculty is not figured in the same way through payroll. So that is it. Let me repeat this. This is a small difference in pay between employees, regardless of skills, experience, and seniority. So with that, let me back up. I want to applaud the leadership here, Portales and Ruidoso, for converting the minimum wage to $15. It virtually lifted many from below poverty levels to $31,200, which is a better figure for themselves and their family. But it did create the compression. Our method divided into 3 phases. One is to identify the personnel making less than 15. This was accomplished on payroll 9/11/21 and paid October 1, 2021. 29 employees total. The total cost for the fiscal year was $96,517, with benefits $118,523. The second phase on this was computing levels that were immediately impacted by the $15 rate. Levels B12 through H17 were directly impacted, and the lesser degree, as the levels increased by the interval increased, there was less of an impact throughout. We went to the phase 2 part. We then addressed the ones, the neighbor to H17 would be I through Q. From that point, we have come up with an amount that impacted, and this impacted 9 employees in the H17 category. H17 had 1 increment of the 30. So the interval is 1, but it had to be changed, as you see on the left-hand side of the minimum range, 31,200. We're trying to be as equitable and fair as possible, but we realized there were a few employees that were caught in exactly what a compression is, and we're trying to also address those particular issues. Phase 3 then was determined in levels I18, U30. Bearing in mind that from this point on, it has a diminishing or less mitigating issue with the $15. So as it sinks down into your higher rates, it has less of an impact. As I said, the 9 employees, the payroll costs are $8,541, 63 differential of those 9 employees within that range of H17. We will address that and correct that as well. We also came across some areas that we needed to address. Those areas became strategies in phase 3. We recognize that some employees absorbing multiple jobs need to be reclassed and driven by a description of category rather than by this particular table. We're still evaluating that sequence. We asked Portalis for assistance on it, and they seem to have moved in that direction. But I understand it's still using an old process behind it. So we're also evaluating non-field positions, eliminating those by relevancy or irrelevancy. Payroll procedures are another strategy that we would adhere to control points in the future. We will review pay differences between employees doing the same job, evaluate those, and we'll still work with Portalis on their approach. So I was very surprised. I thought that the impact was going to be much, much greater than it is. After the initial payout of the low 15 level, I thought we were going to be anywhere from 500,000 to 600,000. That's not the case. I thought that originally this was the table was incongruent, that it was no longer that it was at the end of its life, but in fact it probably has a few years before we go to a different classification. Which we need to do in the future is to reclassify employees in the right pockets on that. That's essentially all I have on that. Are there any questions that you might have? Concerns? If you do, please write them down, please think about them, and email it to us. Stephanie will take those, and Dr. Powell as well, and I will as well. So beyond that, the only other thing I have in brevity is where we sit at September 30th was the last issue of financials that I'm aware of, and I would just like to spend just a few minutes on that. That's the next one. Thank you. What we have there is a comparison from our original budget to the actuals as of September 30th, 2021. Basically, we've got revenues on top and expenditures on the bottom for both the operating and plant funds. As you can see, we should be at hitting on a variance about 25% of the year, and I'm very encouraged that the tuition and fees, also the auxiliary enterprises and other operating revenues are above that. In fact, the operating revenues, if you see the 71.4%, this is really exceptional for year to date. Conversely, we're looking at all expenses at this point, and all the expenses, we should be below the 25%. And we have some that indeed do that, and I think we have one that hits 27 on plant funds, which is understandable. But certainly the instruction is at 19.4%, the academic support at 18.5%, student services 24%. What this seems to indicate that we have a lot of positions that haven't been filled. So, Stephanie, do you have a number on that?
Right now, active, there's 25 positions active.
We have 25 positions that are, okay. And they're being advertised at this point, okay. And if you go further down on the non-operating revenues, we have a pretty good stream from our state appropriation. The local tax levies, it shows us at a $1,060,000. I recalculated that by some changes at the county level, and we should be having a bar to take us up to $1,248,000, which is $188,044 increase in our bar. And that alone would help fund whatever discrepancy we have in our compression. So, Dr. Powell, that's all that I have at this point. Is there any questions regarding that? Sam, you always have a question. Do you have anything going? Okay. Thank you.
Well, we asked Joe to come on for an interim period, and he's worked very hard to get a few projects done, and he's likely going to move back to retirement in the near future. I keep telling him the near future means like 3 years from now, but he assures me it's much sooner than that. So, Joe, we appreciate all the work you've been doing since August, and look forward to continue having you on campus and seeing how these projects go forward. Some upcoming events. So November 20th, coming up not this Saturday, but a week from Saturday, we'll have our turkey trot. So this is the 5K run walk, and also we'll do the 1 mile David Gonzalez Memorial walk run. And these are events that are fundraisers for the Salvation Army and also the Friends of Roswell Animals. And so entry into these events on November 20th is either a can of non-perishable food for the Salvation Army or dog or cat food for the Friends of Roswell Animals. So that's, again, not this Saturday, but a week from Saturday. You'll see more information coming up. We have graduation scheduled, and I want to say, Donna, that's December the 9th, I think, and we're going to do that here in the PAC, and we'll probably do 2 ceremonies. If you're involved with graduation, we'll do a ceremony here, and then we'll go over, I think, to the ITC is what Dina and Donna and the other folks on the committee are planning, and we'll have a dinner there, and then we'll bring the second group in for the second graduation. Basically, just so you know what's happened is The convention center is starting to reopen, but we weren't sure what the process was going to be in their time frame, so we chose to do the December graduation here in the PAC, just so we could give students it wouldn't change. So we're looking to be in the Civic Center for the May graduation, and we'll get more information out to you as that gets a little closer. The other thing I wanted to mention is on the 17th of December, we'll have our end of the year meeting, and that will be a time to get together, get some end of the year information, and then also we'll have a lunch served, and we're not sure, Dina, if it's going to be in the Cub or it's going to be in ITC. Okay, so it's going to be in the ITC where we did the first meeting of the year in August. So that's the information I wanted to share. Again, the turkey trot, not this Saturday, a week from Saturday, graduation December 9th on that evening, 2 ceremonies, and then December 17th, the end of the year meeting. So any questions or anything that people have?
Dr. Powell, is our protocol going to change at all on the COVID?
The question is our protocol going to change any due to the COVID-19 status? And as of today, right now, I don't know what that is going to entail. I do know that OSHA and the federal government have put out additional guidelines for vaccinations. We're following what Eastern does as a system, and they haven't had any additional guidance come out, but we'll keep people posted on our status. Right now, we're just following the governor mandates to wear masks indoors and to try to maintain the personal safety and hygiene. That's it? That's easy. Uh-oh. Well, how about if you come up and you can introduce Stephanie? That'll be great. We do have a new HR director, and then we have another director who was just named, or a change in position, if you want to announce that.
Okay, well, Dr. Powell, I'll wait. So we have our new HR director. Her name's Teresa Casares. She just started. As of this morning, officially the new director of LRC, Veronica Regalado.
Really, thanks, Stephanie, for doing that. Appreciate it. So let's, just get through the rest of this semester, and appreciate all the work everybody's putting in to help students reach their goals. And so we'll end now. I'll hang around if you have individual questions you want to ask. I'll ask Joe to do that also. But I hope you have a great day and a good weekend. So thank you very much for coming today.